113. Peace and Security. Chalcedon Report number 82, June 1st, 1972. Despite their differences, which are very real, our political left and right have much in common. They are concerned, in varying ways, with peace and with law and order. The left, militant in its hostility to the war in Vietnam, has international law and order in mind. Granted that many of the recent demonstrations against the war have been communist-controlled, as Mayor Yorty of Los Angeles proved, they clearly have a popular following because the hostility to the war is very deep. The hostility has good constitutional grounds, moreover. According to the US Constitution, a drafted army or militia can only be used to repel invasion, suppress insurrection, and enforce the laws of the Union, not for a foreign war. Those conservatives who favour the war are thus as lax in their use of the Constitution as the US Supreme Court, and they contribute to the erosion of the law. The Conservatives, on the other hand, also want peace and law and order. They maintain that international law and order depend on defeating communism. Nationally, it means strict law enforcement, and here they are able to score against the left for its lax use of the law and the attendant erosion of the vitality of the law. They can point to the steady disintegration of social order, the increase of crime, and the widely prevalent disrespect for law. The reigning Liberals are no less concerned with peace and with law and order, although their definitions would not agree with those of the left and right. Their involvement in Vietnam, according to every president from Kennedy to Nixon, has been a peacemaking involvement. Their attempts to gain internal peace are very prominent, although they are, in effect, the same as their international efforts, namely to gain peace by buying peace. Concessions are made to the communists, to minority groups, to capital and to labour, both to buy support and also to buy peace. The principle is simply the old idea that a tiger with a full stomach is safer to live with than a hungry one. The hope, in fact, is that the satiated tiger can be turned into a pussycat with constant stuffing. But peace on all sides is a common goal, however differently sought. Men are weary with trouble, tension, and the growing lack of safety for man in his own home or on his own street. This situation is not new. Mattingly gives us a telling insight into the attitude of the people of the Roman Empire. Peace is the boon that is most steadily and fervently desired, for on it depend such possibilities of the good life as the empire can still offer. Liberty is still valued, but no longer as the supreme good. It is never for long in the foreground. The empire gave stability and rest to a weary and aging world. Harold Mattingly, The Man in the Roman Street, New York, New York, W. W. Norton, 1966, page 111. The Romans, Mattingly points out, had a great absorption in the present with a vast respect for the past. They had less interest in the future. The rapture of the forward view is very hard to find in any corner of the Roman Empire. The Roman concern was to maintain what they had, not to work and plan for a greater future. Ibid, pages 137, 141, 142, and 149. As a result, despite the lack of any real enemy other than itself, Rome fell. It had only one future-oriented element, the Christians, who then built a new civilization. The people of Rome wanted peace with law and order, and Rome was less and less able to deliver it. Today, the failure of the state to give peace is everywhere apparent. The goals of most people are limited ones, simply to be given enough law and order to enjoy what they have in peace. If they could turn the clock back 20 years, they would be very happy. But people whose goal is peace rarely enjoy it. Peace is a product of true victory, and law and order cannot flourish unless, first of all, there is theological law and philosophical order. People today want the fruits of peace, not the roots. Where people long for peace rather than victory and progress, there also a distorted vision prevails. This distorted vision governed many American writers of the 19th century. They had broken with the Puritan faith of their fathers and were hostile to the America it had produced. As a result, many of them could see little good in the United States and everything evil. Still surrounded by forests, streams, and a continent of rich resources, they looked, all the same, to other shores for their paradise and hope. Herman Melville in Clarel spoke of Tahiti as the only fit place on earth for the advent of Christ. But both the authorities Melville used and his own knowledge confirmed the fact that the South Sea Islands were no paradise, less so then than now. The islands were marked, Baird tells us, by filth and disease, idiocy and cruelty. They had plagues of stinging flies, fetid heat, ordure around the dwelling places, filth and vermin over the food, and so on. William Ellis reported that on an island near Tahiti, he had seen a hungry child given a piece of her own father's flesh for nourishment. Lieutenant Wise, following Melville on Nuka Hiva, saw the chief's brother, drunk with ava, coiled upon a bed of filthy mats, half dead with some loathsome disease. James Baird, Ishmael, A Study of the Symbolic Mode in Primitivism, New York, New York, Harper Torchbooks, 1960, pages 120 and 121. Somewhat later, Gauguin, while admitting that Tahitian women were not beautiful, properly speaking, still held that they had an indefinable quality of penetrating the mysteries of the infinite, page 149. Both Melville and Gauguin failed to see the potentialities of their respective countries and looked for the impossible in the South Seas and opposed their imagination on a world they would not face realistically. The same imposition of dreams onto an ugly reality has been common among travellers to the communist countries. They see no good in their country and see the Marxist states in the light of their imagination. When men place peace above other considerations, they are unwilling to face up to anything which tells them that their dream is a futile one. They are ready then to compromise truth in order to gain peace, because they are weary of the struggle. But peace, like happiness, always eludes men when they make it a goal of human endeavour. Peace and happiness are byproducts of other goals. We cannot make ourselves truly happy by deciding we need to be happy. Happiness is a product of work well done, of a life lived in successful community, of peace with God, and of much more. Men make happiness a goal when they have failed miserably in all other objectives, and what they then mean by happiness is really a narcotized state wherein they feel no griefs and can enjoy some very limited pleasures of play. Similarly, peace is a byproduct of a general success in one's relationships to God and man, in one's calling, and in a confident prospect concerning the future. Peace implies a harmony of affairs and a general harmony of personal and social interests. What most people mean by peace is an attitude of, leave me alone and don't bother me with the problems of the world, or do anything but get rid of all these problems and leave me to enjoy myself. Peace, in this sense, is a retreat. It is more than that. It is a form of suicide, a surrender of life for a retirement to the sidelines of life. Unfortunately for these people, the world is now moving towards a radical confrontation of man by the basic issues and problems of life. All the postponed problems, the deferred and pressing debts of life are beginning to fall due and are demanding attention. The luxury of indifference is fast waning. Church members who left the defence of the faith to their clergy are now finding that God is requiring them to defend their faith or to surrender it. The state, which has been promising man more and more cradle to grave or womb to tomb security, is less and less able to deliver any kind of security. A radio announcement today by a presidential candidate asked, "Are you tired of phonies in political office? Then vote for me." The appeal of this approach has been great, and the reason is an obvious one. Any politician who offers man peace and security will offer thereby a fraudulent claim, so that a contender can always impugn his integrity in order to gain office. He, in turn, will be regarded as equally a fraud, because no politician can deliver what God himself alone can give, and does not give more than a limited amount of in this world. Psalm 24 verse 2 tells us something about the world and our life in it, which men prefer to forget. "For he hath founded it upon the seas, and established it upon the floods." This is a very precarious foundation for life. The seas and floods are places for alert and steady movement, not a peaceful standing still. History is a battlefield, and it calls for action to victory. There is peace and order in the graveyard, not in the firing line. A culture or civilization which thinks first of peace is most certain to have war and death, because it has lost its will to live. In the midst of a Roman Empire dedicated to peace and security, oblivious of the future and trying to hold on to the remnants of the past, one element was future-oriented and able to command the day: the Christians. For long years now, the church has been asleep, clergy and laity alike. The widespread apostasy of the clergy is forcing many of the laity out of their slumbers. If the faith is to be defended, they must do it. The result is a spreading revival of doctrinal concern, a reawakening of faith, prayer and action, and a readiness to stand for the faith which did not exist 20 years ago. The old forms are crumbling, perhaps because they must. Old wineskins cannot contain new wine. The oldest and most worn of the old wineskins is the humanistic state. The state, as man's saviour, has tried desperately to give man that peace and security which its political lullabies have promised. However, even its pampered brats of the academic community are awake and squalling. The things the modern state least provides are those it most promises: peace and security, and, in the growing monetary crisis, its ability to give even a measure of these is limited. We live in a momentous and exciting era, a turning point in history. Before the healing, rains come. The sky always darkens, and the thunder and lightning are very much in evidence. We are not in the winter time of the world, but in its spring. Wise men will plant for the future.